The cabin lights dimmed to their evening setting as I moved through the first-class aisle with practiced efficiency. 22 years I'd been doing this job. 22 years of perfecting the art of invisible service, of reading passengers before they spoke, of knowing exactly when someone needed another drink or just wanted to be left alone. Tonight's flight from Istanbul to Milan was only half full. The December snow had delayed us by 40 minutes, and most passengers had opted for morning departures instead. I didn't mind the quiet. There was something peaceful about night flights in winter, the cabin a warm cocoon against the darkness outside. I'd already completed my initial service in the business class section. Now I was moving to first class where only 3 seats were occupied. An elderly Italian couple in row 1 fast asleep, and a man in seat 2A, his face turned toward the window, absorbed in whatever he was watching on the darkness beyond. I approached with my service cart, the soft clink of glassware the only sound besides the steady hum of the engines. The man didn't turn as I stopped beside his seat. I could see his reflection in the window, though the details were obscured by the glass and shadow. "Excuse me, sir," I said in English, my tone professionally warm. "May I offer you something to drink?" He turned then, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. Not because he was handsome, though he was, in that rough, lived-in way that spoke of hard years and harder choices. Not because of the tattoos that crawled up his neck from beneath his expensive shirt, geometric patterns that suggested both artistry and danger. No, I forgot to breathe because of his eyes. Dark brown, almost black with flecks of amber that caught the cabin light. Eyes I had known in another lifetime, in another version of both of us. But he was looking at me the way all passengers look at flight attendants. Polite, distant. Seeing the uniform, not the person inside it. "Whiskey," he said. His voice deeper than I remembered. Roughened by years and cigarettes and whatever had happened in the quarter century since I'd last heard it. "Neat. Whatever you have that's decent." Turkish accent but softened, blurred at the edges by time spent elsewhere. Italian maybe, or somewhere else in Europe. "Of course, sir." My voice came out steady, professional. Years of training taking over when my brain had short-circuited. "We have Glenfiddich, Macallan, or Johnny Walker Blue Label." "Macallan." I nodded, turning to my cart, grateful for the excuse to look away from those eyes that didn't recognize mine. My hands moved automatically, selecting the bottle, pouring 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. It wasn't him. Couldn't be him. Aaron had been 14 when I last saw him, all knees and elbows and that wild mop of dark hair his mother could never tame. This man was solid muscle beneath his tailored suit, shoulders that filled the seat, hands that looked like they could break things without much effort. But those eyes. God, those eyes. I turned back to hand him the glass, keeping my expression neutral, my smile the practice one eye perfected over 2 decades of service. He reached for it, and that's when I saw it. Time stopped. The scar on his right index finger, running from the base to just below the nail. White against his tanned skin, about 2 inches long, slightly crooked. A scar I knew intimately because I had an identical one on my own right index finger. We were 8 years old, sitting in his family's tiny apartment in Katakoy, watching some action movie his older brother had rented. There was a knife fight scene, and Aaron had turned to me with that reckless grin I knew meant trouble. "We should be blood brothers," he'd said. "Like in the movies." We'd pressed our bleeding fingers together, sitting on his mother's worn couch while blood dripped onto our jeans. We'd made up some oath about always being friends, always having each other's backs, never forgetting each other no matter what. 2 weeks later, his family had disappeared. Just gone, apartment empty, no forwarding address, no explanation. My mother had said something about debt, about Aaron's father getting involved with the wrong people. 25 years. 25 years since that night, since that oath, since I'd last seen the boy who'd been my best friend from kindergarten through 3rd grade. And now he was sitting in seat 2A, taking his whiskey from my trembling hand, completely unaware of who I was. "Thank you," he said, his fingers brushing mine as he took the glass. His scar touched my scar. The contact lasted less than a second, but I felt it like an electric shock, like recognition running both ways even if only one of us was conscious of it. I pulled my hand back quickly, tucking it against my uniform skirt where he couldn't see it shaking. "You're welcome, sir. Please let me know if you need anything else." I moved away before he could respond, pushing my cart toward the galley with movements that probably looked normal but felt jerky. Wrong. In the galley, I gripped the counter and forced myself to breathe. It was him. It was Aaron. 25 years older, covered in tattoos, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, but it was him. The scar proved it. We were the only two people in the world with that exact scar in that exact place. I looked down at my own finger, at the thin white line I'd carried for so long I barely noticed it anymore. Evidence of childhood recklessness. Of a promise made and broken through no fault of our own. Did he remember? Did he ever think about the girl he'd sworn eternal friendship with at 8 years old? Did he wonder what happened to me the way I'd wondered about him? Or had 25 years been long enough to erase a childhood friendship entirely? Sophia. My colleague Eileen poked her head into the galley. The couple in wanna want coffee. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine, I lied. Just a headache. I'll get their coffee. I prepared the coffee service on autopilot, my mind spinning through possibilities. Should I say something? Should I tell him who I was? What if he didn't remember? What if he did remember and didn't care? What if I was reading too much into a scar that could be just a coincidence? But it wasn't a coincidence. I knew it wasn't. I delivered the coffee to the elderly couple, exchanged pleasantries in broken Italian, and told myself I wouldn't look at seat 2A on my way back to the galley. I looked anyway. He was staring out the window again, the whiskey glass cradled in his right hand, the hand with the scar. From my angle I could see it clearly, that white line that matched mine perfectly. Aaron. After all these years. Aaron. The rest of the service passed in a blur. I moved through my duties mechanically, avoiding seat 2A as much as possible. When I did have to pass by, I kept my eyes forward, my expression neutral. He didn't try to flag me down, didn't ask for anything else. About an hour into the flight, most of the cabin had gone quiet. The elderly couple was asleep. The other first-class passenger was watching a movie. I was preparing the midnight snack service when Eileen came into the galley. The man in 2A wants to speak with you, she said, her tone curious. Specifically asked for the senior attendant. That's you. My heart stopped. Did he say what about? No. But he doesn't look angry or anything. Probably just wants to compliment the service or something. She shrugged. You know how these rich guys are. They like attention. I smoothed my uniform, checked my reflection in the galley's metal surface, and walked to seat 2A with my professional smile firmly in place. He was looking at me as I approached. Really looking, not the distant passenger gaze from before. His dark eyes tracked my movement with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Yes, sir. I stopped beside his seat. How may I help you? For a long moment he said nothing. Just studied my face with an expression I couldn't read. Then he held up his right hand, the one with the scar, as if showing me something. This scar, he said quietly. I got it when I was 8 years old. From a kitchen knife that was way too sharp for a stupid kid to be playing with. My breath caught in my throat. I was making a promise, he continued, his eyes never leaving mine. A blood oath with my best friend. A girl who lived in the building next to mine. We swore we'd always be friends. Always be there for each other. He paused. Her name was Sophia. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Could only stand there with my professional smile cracking at the edges while my heart hammered against my ribs. Sophia Yilmaz, he said, and hearing my maiden name in his voice after 25 years broke something open inside me. That was her full name. Sophia, with the dark eyes and the serious expression and the way of correcting everyone's grammar even when we were just kids. He lowered his hand, but his gaze didn't waver. I never forgot her. Never forgot that night, that promise. And I definitely never forgot this scar. He held up his finger again. Because every time I looked at it over the years, I thought about the friend I'd lost when my family had to run in the middle of the night. I found my voice finally, though it came out barely above a whisper. When did you recognize me? A smile touched his lips. Not the reckless grin of the boy I'd known, but something quieter, sadder, tempered by years and experiences I knew nothing about. When you handed me my drink, he said. I saw your scar. Of course he'd seen it. The same way I'd seen his. Recognition running both ways through an old wound. A shared mark that we'd carried for 25 years. I didn't think you'd remember, I admitted. It was so long ago. We were children. Some things you don't forget, Sophia. His voice was rough, heavy with something I couldn't quite name. No matter how much time passes or how far you run, the cabin suddenly felt too small, too intimate. I was acutely aware of the sleeping passengers nearby, of Eileen probably watching from the galley, of the fact that I was supposed to be working. I looked for you, I said, because I needed him to know. After your family left, my mother and we tried to find out where you went. But there was nothing. It was like your entire family just vanished. We did vanish. His expression darkened. We had to. My father owed money to people who don't take kindly to unpaid debts. I wanted to ask more. Wanted to know everything about the years between then and now, about how the boy I'd known had become this man with tattoos and expensive suits and eyes that had seen too much. But this wasn't the time or place. We were in a cabin at 30,000 feet, and I was on duty, and there were protocols and professional boundaries I couldn't just ignore. I should get back to work, I said reluctantly. But maybe. Would you want to talk more? Later? After we land? Yes. No hesitation. Just simple certainty. I'd like that very much. I nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. Aaron. Yes. I never forgot either. The promise. The scar. You. I never forgot any of it. Something shifted in his expression. Softness, warmth, the ghost of the boy I'd once known showing through the hardened exterior of the man he'd become. Good, he said quietly. That's good, Sophia. I returned to the galley in a daze. Eileen looked at me with raised eyebrows, clearly dying of curiosity, but I couldn't form words to explain what had just happened. I wasn't even sure I understood it myself. Aaron. After 25 years. Aaron. The rest of the flight passed in a strange suspended reality. I did my job, went through the motions of service, but my mind was stuck in seat 2A, replaying every word of our brief conversation. Every time I passed his seat, I felt his eyes on me. Not the uncomfortable stare of a difficult passenger, but something else. Recognition. Connection. The acknowledgement of a shared history that neither of us had forgotten. The rest of the flight passed in a strange suspended reality. Time moved differently after our conversation. Each minute stretched out, heavy with awareness. Every time I passed through the first-class cabin, I felt his presence like a physical thing, even when I wasn't looking directly at him. I did my job. Went through the motions of service. Collected glasses, refreshed drinks, ensured everyone was comfortable for the final hour of the flight. But my mind was stuck in a loop, replaying every word of our brief conversation. The way he'd said my name. The way he'd shown me his scar. The way he'd looked at me like I was something precious that he'd lost and miraculously found again. As we began our descent into Milan, I made my way through the cabin one final time, collecting glasses and trash, ensuring everyone was prepared for landing. When I reached seat 2A, Aaron was looking out the window at the lights of the city below. We'll be landing in about 20 minutes, I said softly. Eileen noticed, of course. She'd been watching me all night, curiosity written across her face. As we prepared the cabin for landing, she cornered me in the galley. Okay, you need to tell me what's happening, she said, blocking my path to the coffee station. You've been weird since you talked to the guy in 2A. And don't say it's nothing because I've worked with you for 3 years, Sophia, and I've never seen you like this. I checked to make sure no passengers were within earshot, then sighed. We knew each other. A long time ago. We were best friends when we were kids and then his family moved away suddenly. I haven't seen him in 25 years. Eileen's eyes went wide. 25 years? And he just happened to be on your flight. Apparently. That's insane. That's like movie-level coincidence. She was practically vibrating with excitement now. What did he say? Are you going to see him again? Tomorrow night. Dinner. I busied myself with checking the seatbelt sign panel, avoiding her gaze. It's just dinner between old friends. Nothing dramatic. Sophia, look at me. She waited until I met her eyes. I saw him. Tall, gorgeous, those tattoos, that suit that probably costs more than my rent. And the way he looked at you when you were talking? That wasn't old friends. That was something else entirely. We were 8 years old when we last saw each other. It's complicated. So uncomplicated. She grinned. Go to dinner. See what happens. When's the last time you went on a date? This isn't a date. It's whatever you need to tell yourself. She patted my shoulder. But Sophia? Don't overthink it. Life's too short, and coincidences like this don't happen for no reason. The seatbelt sign chimed on as we began our descent. I returned to my position, made my final walk through the cabin. When I passed seat 2A, Aaron was staring out the window at the lights of Milan below. His expression distant, thoughtful. I wanted to stop, wanted to say something, but the landing procedures left no room for personal moments, so I continued on, professional and efficient. The plane touched down smoothly at 11:47 p.m., 3 minutes ahead of schedule. I went through the landing procedures on autopilot, helped passengers collect their belongings from the overhead bins, smiled and thanked them for flying with us, made sure the cabin was secure. Aaron was one of the last to deplane. He'd taken his time, letting the other passengers go first, organizing his carry-on with deliberate slowness. When he finally stood and moved toward the exit, he paused beside me. The other flight attendants were busy, Eileen at the forward galley, the others checking seats for left items. For just a moment it was only us in the aisle. Tomorrow night, Sophia, he said quietly. His hand brushed against mine, deliberate, both of us acutely aware of the contact. 8 o'clock. I'll text you the address. I'll be there. He nodded, held my gaze for one more second, then moved past me down the jet bridge. I watched him until he disappeared into the terminal. This man who was Aaron but also not Aaron, familiar and foreign all at once. The cleanup and preparation for the return flight took 2 hours. By the time we were released, it was past 2 a.m. The crew van dropped me at my hotel, a modest place near the airport that the airline contracted with. I was exhausted, but when I got to my room, sleep was impossible. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my uniform, and stared at my right hand, at the scar that had defined so much of my life without me even realizing it. I'd stopped noticing it years ago, the way you stop seeing familiar things. But now it felt like it was glowing, burning, demanding attention. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Aaron. Just wanted to make sure I have the right number. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. There's a small Italian place called La Pergola, 2 blocks from my hotel. Casual dress. And Sophia, I'm glad it was your flight tonight. Of all the flights, all the nights, I'm glad it was yours. I read the message 3 times, then typed and deleted 5 different responses before settling on something simple. 8 p.m. works. I'll find it. And Aaron, me too. I'm glad to. His response came immediately. Good. Sleep well, Sophia. I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be important. I finally changed out of my uniform, took a shower, tried to settle my racing thoughts. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. 8-year-old Aaron with his reckless grin, superimposed over the man he'd become. 43 years old, tattooed and dangerous looking, and somehow still carrying the same scar, the same promise. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams. I dreamed of cutting my finger with a kitchen knife. Dreamed of pressing it to someone else's, blood mixing, promises made. Dreamed of searching through crowds for a face I couldn't quite remember but knew intimately in my bones. When my alarm went off at noon, I felt like I'd barely slept at all. But there was a text waiting. Good morning. Counting the hours until tonight. Just that. Nothing flowery or elaborate. But it made my heart race anyway. I spent the afternoon in a state of nervous energy. Went to a cafe near the Duomo, couldn't finish my coffee. Walked through the Galleria, barely seeing the architecture. Returned to my hotel with hours still to kill before 8. What does one wear to dinner with a childhood friend who's now a stranger? Who's now a man with tattoos and expensive suits and eyes that have seen things I can't imagine? I tried on 5 different outfits. Too formal. Too casual. Too much like I was trying. Not enough like I cared. I finally settled on dark jeans that fit well. A soft cream sweater that was elegant without being dressy. My good leather boots. I left my hair down for once, not pulled back in the severe bun my job required. Applied makeup carefully, subtly, just enough to look polished without looking like I tried too hard. At 7:45, I stared at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. When was the last time I'd gotten ready for something that mattered? When was the last time I felt this nervous, this uncertain, this alive? La Pergola was exactly as he'd described. Small, tucked into a quiet street, warm light spilling from the windows onto the cobblestones outside. I stood outside for a moment, gathering my courage before pushing open the door. Eileen cornered me as we prepared the cabin for the return flight. Okay, what was that about? You know him. I did, I said, still processing it all myself. A long time ago. We were kids together, best friends. I haven't seen him in 25 years. And he just happened to be on your flight? Apparently. That's insane. What are the odds? Eileen shook her head in amazement. Are you going to see him again? Tomorrow night. Dinner. She grinned. Well, at least something interesting came out of this boring night flight. And he's hot, Sophia. Very hot. In that dangerous, mysterious way. I didn't correct her, didn't try to explain that it wasn't about him being hot or mysterious. It was about a shared scar, a childhood promise, and the strange miracle of two people finding each other again after all the years and distance and changes that should have kept them apart forever. That night, back in my hotel room in Milan, I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at the scar on my finger, remembering the boy who'd suggested we cut ourselves with a kitchen knife because he'd seen it in a movie. Remembering the pain and the fear and the absolute certainty we'd both felt that this made us bound to each other forever. At 8 years old, forever had seemed like a simple concept. You made a promise, you kept it. You swore friendship, it lasted. You pressed your bleeding finger to someone else's, and that was it. Bonded for life. But life had other plans. Life had debt collectors and midnight escapes and 25 years of silence. And now, somehow, life had brought us back together. In the most unexpected way, in the least likely place, but back together nonetheless. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Aaron. Just wanted to make sure I have the right number. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m.? There's an Italian place near the hotel. Casual dress. And Sophia. I'm glad it was your flight tonight. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. 8 p.m. works. See you then. And Aaron, me too. I'm glad too. I fell asleep finally as dawn broke over Milan, my phone still in my hand, my finger with its white scar visible in the early morning light. The next evening I spent far too long getting ready. Nothing too fancy but not too casual either. Dark jeans, a soft cream sweater, my good boots. I left my hair down for once, not pulled back in the tight bun my uniform required. Applied makeup carefully, not flight attendant professional but not too much either. I was nervous. Ridiculously teenager-level nervous. This was Aaron. I'd known him since we were 5 years old. But I'd also not known him for 25 years, and that made him effectively a stranger. A stranger who happened to carry the same scar I did, who remembered the same promises, who had somehow become this intimidating man in expensive suits. I was nervous. Ridiculously teenager-level nervous. This was Aaron. I'd known him since we were 5 years old. But I'd also not known him for 25 years, and that made him effectively a stranger. A stranger who happened to carry the same scar I did, who remembered the same promises, who had somehow become this intimidating man in expensive suits. The restaurant smelled of garlic and wine and bread baking somewhere in the back. Soft Italian music played, mixed with the gentle murmur of conversation from other diners. The lighting was low, intimate, candles on each table casting dancing shadows. I spotted him immediately. He was at a corner table, his back to the wall in a way that seemed instinctive, automatic. The same way he'd always positioned himself even as a kid, wanting to see the whole room, all the exits. Some things don't change, apparently, even after 25 years. He saw me at the same moment and stood immediately. He was dressed casually tonight. Dark jeans and a black button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The tattoos on his forearms were visible now. Intricate geometric patterns mixed with what looked like Italian words I couldn't read from this distance. Sophia. He came around the table, pulled out my chair like we were in some period drama. Waited until I was seated before sitting down himself. You look beautiful. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. I gestured to his arms, the visible ink. Though I have to say the tattoos were unexpected. You were such a rule follower as a kid. He laughed. A rough sound that I didn't remember from childhood, but that somehow fit him perfectly now. People change. Circumstances change them. How many do you have? Tattoos? 12. Maybe 13 depending on how you count. Some of them connect. He turned his right forearm toward me, showing me the geometric pattern more clearly. This one I got when I was 16. In Napoli. Napoli? So your family went to Italy. Eventually. First we ran to my grandmother's village outside Izmir. Stayed there for 3 months. Then my father found work on a shipping crew going to Naples. We were supposed to be there for 6 months, but 6 months became a year, became 5 years, became permanent. A waiter appeared, took our drink orders. Aaron ordered wine without consulting me. A bottle of something Italian I'd never heard of. When the waiter left, he leaned back in his chair and studied me with those dark, intense eyes. Your turn, he said. What happened after we left? You finished school in Katakoi. I did. Graduated from the neighborhood school, then high school. Started university, studying languages and international relations. I took a breath. My father died in my 2nd year. Heart attack. Sudden. He was 51. Something shifted in Aaron's expression. Sympathy but also understanding. I'm sorry, Sophia. It was a long time ago. 20 years now. But it changed things. Money got tight. My mother couldn't work, her health wasn't good. I had to leave university, find a job that paid well and paid quickly. I shrugged. Flight attendant was the obvious choice. Good salary, benefits, travel. I was 22 when I started. And you never went back? To university. Never had the chance. Or maybe I did and just didn't take it. After a while the job became comfortable. Familiar. Easier to stay than to start over. The wine arrived. Aaron poured for both of us with the ease of someone who'd done this countless times in countless restaurants. We toasted to nothing in particular, and I took a sip. It was good. Better than anything I usually drank, smooth and complex. What about marriage? He asked. Eileen mentioned you're not married. You asked about me? A slight smile. I asked Eileen your full name while you were in the galley. She may have volunteered additional information. I had to laugh. That sounds like Eileen. And no, never married. Came close twice. Once when I was 28, engaged for 6 months before I realized I was saying yes because everyone expected me to, not because I wanted to. And again at 34, dated a pilot for 2 years, but I trailed off. But what? But it didn't feel right. He was nice, kind, stable. Everything I should have wanted. But there was always something missing. Some connection that should have been there but wasn't. Aaron nodded slowly, turning his wine glass between his fingers. I was married, he said. For 5 years. Divorced 3 years ago. This surprised me, though I tried not to show it. What happened? She wanted things I couldn't give her. Stability. A husband who came home every night. A man who wasn't. He gestured vaguely at himself. This. Who didn't have the history I have, the connections, the complications. What kind of complications? He met my eyes directly. You want the truth or the version that sounds better? Always the truth. We promised that too, remember? When we were kids. No lies between blood siblings. A genuine smile touched his face then, the first really unguarded expression I'd seen from him. You're right. We did promise that. He took a breath. My business is legitimate now. Import-export, luxury goods, Italian fashion and furniture going to Turkey and the Middle East. It's legal, profitable, clean. But it wasn't always. No. When I was younger I did things I'm not proud of. Worked for people who weren't good people. Made money in ways that kept me up at night. He didn't look away, didn't try to soften it. I was trying to survive, to help my family, but that doesn't excuse it. I should have been shocked. Should have made excuses and left. But instead I felt a strange sense of understanding. When did you go legitimate? 6 years ago. I'd made enough money, had enough connections to start something legal. Took 3 years to fully extract myself from the old life, but I did it. Built something real. He paused. But the tattoos remain. The scars remain. The reputation remains. Some things you can't erase completely. The waiter returned to take our food order. I let Aaron order for both of us, suddenly trusting him to know what was good here. When we were alone again, I reached across the table and took his hand, The one with the scar. We all have things we're not proud of, Aaron. Choices we made when we were desperate or scared, or just too young to know better. Even you. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through mine. Perfect rule following, Sophia? I'm not perfect. I stayed in a job that bored me because it was safe. I said yes to men I didn't love because I was afraid of being alone. I stopped looking for you after a few years because it hurt too much to hope. His grip on my hand tightened. I never stopped looking. For the first 10 years I searched. Every database I could access, every Sofia Yilmaz in Turkey trying to find you. I hired a private investigator when I finally had the money. Found your parents' old address, but you'd moved. Found your mother's new address, but He trailed off. But what? But I couldn't bring myself to show up at her door. What would I say? Hi, I'm Aaron, your daughter's friend from when she was 8. I just wanted to find her because of a blood oath we made with a kitchen knife? It sounded insane. I had to laugh even as tears pricked at my eyes. It does sound insane. It is insane. And yet here we are. Here we are, I echoed. The food arrived. Some kind of pasta that I barely tasted, too focused on the man across from me, on the conversation that was filling in 25 years of gaps. He told me about Naples, about learning Italian in the streets, about the crew he'd run with as a teenager, about tattoos that marked belonging, about fights that left scars, about the slow, painful process of becoming someone different. I told him about my mother's illness 5 years ago, the cancer that had taken her slowly, about my small apartment in Beyoğlu that I barely spent time in, about flying the same routes month after month, year after year, watching the world from 30,000 feet but never really being part of it. Do you like it? He asked, echoing his question from the night before. The flying. Sometimes. There are moments of beauty in it. Sunrises over the Mediterranean. The northern lights from the Arctic routes. The way clouds look from above. I paused. But mostly it's repetitive. Same announcements, same service, same conversations with passengers who don't see me as a person, just as a function. But last night was different. Last night was different, I agreed. He poured more wine for both of us. I have a confession to make. What's that? When I saw your scar, when I recognized you. That wasn't the first time I'd noticed you. This caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, I noticed you when you were doing the initial service. The way you moved, efficient but graceful. The way you spoke, polite but not fake. There was something. He searched for words. Familiar. Like déjà vu. Like I should know you but couldn't place it. And then you saw the scar. And then everything clicked into place. We stayed until the restaurant started closing, until the waiter had cleared our plates and brought coffee and cleared those too and was beginning to look pointedly at the door. We talked until my voice was hoarse, until I'd filled in as much of the 25-year gap as one dinner could hold. When we finally stepped out into the cold Milan night, it was past midnight. The street was quiet, just the distant sound of traffic from the main road. Aaron walked beside me, close enough that our arms brushed with each step. When's your next flight to Milan? He asked as we approached my hotel. 2 weeks. The 18th of December. I'll be here. I'm here most weeks anyway for business. Text me when you land. We stopped at the hotel entrance. The doorman was visible through the glass, studiously looking anywhere but at us. Aaron. I started, not sure what I wanted to say. What are we doing? What is this? He cupped my face in his hands, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. I don't know, Sophia. But I know I spent 25 years wondering what happened to you. And now that I've found you, I'm not ready to let you disappear again. I'm not disappearing. I'll be back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is too long. But I'll wait. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle and chaste and somehow more intimate than anything else could have been. Sleep well, Sophia. You too, Aaron. I watched him walk away, this man who had once been a boy, this stranger who was also my oldest friend. He turned back once, just before the street corner, and raised his right hand in a wave. The hand with the scar. I raised mine in return, matching scars across the distance. Then he was gone and I was alone in the cold December night, my heart full of something I couldn't quite name but that felt like hope, like possibility, like the universe saying that some promises are meant to be kept. Even if it takes 25 years and a coincidence that feels like fate. What are you saying, Aaron? I'm saying I want to know you again. Not the girl from my childhood, but the woman you are now. I want to take you to dinner again. And again after that. I want to fill in all the gaps, learn all the parts of you I missed. My heart was racing. This was crazy. This was reckless. This was exactly the kind of impulsive decision the 8-year-old us would have made without a second thought. I fly out of Milan 3 times a month, I said. Sometimes more. I'm based in Istanbul, but I have regular routes. And I'm in Milan almost every other week. Istanbul when I'm not here. So what are you suggesting? Long distance. Whatever this is. He smiled. I'm suggesting we start where we left off, as friends, and we see where it goes from there. No promises except the one we already made. To always be there for each other. I looked down at our joined hands, at the matching scars pressed together. 25 years. 25 years since we'd made that promise with a kitchen knife and childhood certainty. And somehow against all odds here we were again. Okay, I said. Friends. With 25 years to catch up on. Friends, he agreed. For now. We stayed until the restaurant closed, talking until our voices were hoarse. He walked me back to my hotel, his hand holding mine the entire way. At the entrance he paused. When's your next flight to Milan? 2 weeks. The 18th. I'll be here. Text me when you land. Aaron. What if this doesn't work? What if we're too different now? What if? He stopped my words with his fingers against my lips. Then at least we'll know. At least we'll have tried. Better than spending another 25 years wondering what if. He was right. Of course he was right. 2 weeks then. 2 weeks. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle and chaste and somehow more intimate than anything else could have been. Sleep well, Sophia. You too, Aaron. I watched him walk away, this man who had once been a boy, this stranger who was also my oldest friend. Then I looked down at my finger, at the scar that had brought us back together after all these years. Some promises, I thought, were meant to be kept. Even if it took 25 years and a coincidence that felt like fate. Even if all you had was a scar and a memory and the hope that history could somehow become future.